All right, welcome to God's Rescue and Restoration Plan, the fifth session. And we have a lot to go through today. So hang on, we're going to go through a lot of Bible because there's a lot to this one. And we'll just go ahead and get started. So we're going to summarize the last slide from the last session first. We went through Noah and the flood, and we saw that Yahweh takes action to ensure that his promises are fulfilled. He certainly did it there in a big way. God makes an unconditional covenant, and remembering that covenants and promises extend forward through administrations until they're fulfilled. So the rules of life can change, but the covenants and promises remain. So, for example, the rules of life in paradise were different than what they were after paradise. And the rules between paradise and the flood were different than what they were after the flood. But promises of God stick, and they go through those changes. Covenants and promises can layer on top of each other, they can overlap, and they are still all active until they're fulfilled. And God's actions and communications will always be consistent with that. He's never going to contradict himself. And then we saw that the rainbow covenant itself establishes a firm physical basis for us on earth that lasts as long as the earth lasts. And that takes care of seasons and hot and cold and all that stuff. And in the meantime, the devil realized, hey, the seed of the woman's going through Noah's family, of which there's only 8 at this moment because the flood just happened. So that's where we ended up with, and this is what our timeline looked like at the end of the session. So here we're going to add another 1,000 years on. It's going to take us to 960 BC. But there is a lot of things that happen in this 1,000 years. So we're going to be in this 1,000-year period for quite a while, quite a number of sessions, because there is so much to cover. It starts with God beginning to roll out a major step in his new, or in, not his new, but his rescue plan. It's a new step, but it's not a new plan particularly. And it starts with Abram, who's born in 1954 BC. Interesting to know that Noah died just a year or two before Abram was born. That's how long Noah lived. He lived 950 years, died, and then a couple years later, Abram was born. So that's the time frame. Now we're going to go through starting in Genesis chapter 12, starting verse 1. Now Yahweh said to Abram, get out of your country and from your relatives and from your father's house and go to the land that I will show you. And look at this promise that he gives him. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. Make your name great. You will be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse the one who curses you, and all of the clans of the earth will be blessed in you, which drives us towards realizing the Messiah is going to come, the seed of the woman is going to come through Abram's lineage. So this alerts Satan to that fact. He must now focus on Abraham's family and his offspring and not anyone else really in the population. So we're going to take a look at a map here, big map from the Satellite Bible Atlas. And see the yellow circle that popped up there near the top. That's the area, the region that we're talking about right now, verses. That's where Abram is. That's where he gets the message, and he's going to get started from that. And then he's going to travel down this blue purplish arrow. That's kind of be the journey that he's taking. So you see, Egypt is way down here. The Sinai Peninsula is here. What we call Israel today is kind of all through this area. Of course, it's not Israel yet. It doesn't exist that way yet. So that kind of gets our bearings of where we're going here. And he's 75 years old. So we're really today going to be looking at 25 years of his life. Boy, a lot happened to him during those 25 years. But he's 75 years old when it starts, 1879, with Sarai, his wife, that's her name at the time, and Lot, his nephew. With all they had, they get going. And I'm just going to summarize Genesis chapter 12, kind of give you the outline. We're not going to spend the time reading it all. Important to know, though, that they're going to the land of Canaan, which is in the blue circle there on the left, next to the Mediterranean Sea. An interesting verse 6 says, Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh, which is within that circle there. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. And the way it's using the word Canaanites, it's indicating that the Nephilim are there. We saw the Nephilim preceding the flood. They're back. They're being repopulated again, and they are beginning to dominate the population in this region of the world. And it's just interesting that it notes that is happening. Then a famine comes along, so they head to Egypt. You see that with the blue circle. And then when that's over, they return to Canaan and settle in the Negev area, which is kind of the southern part, basically, of Israel, down around in this area. So they got too large, they being Abram and Lot, his nephew. Both are very wealthy, both have lots of animals, lots of herds. They need lots of grazing, they need lots of water, and they got too big. They couldn't coexist in the same spot. There was contention between the groups. So Abram said, let's split. If you go right, I'll go left. If you go left, I'll go right. You choose. And Lot chose the plain of Jordan and went to Sodom, which is the south end of the Dead Sea. Abram went to the Oaks of Mamre, which is about 35, 40 miles away from where Lot was. And then kings of Mesopotamia from the north came through, very powerful kings, and they were dominating. They kind of came through on a route, a circular route, more or less. And the war broke out in Lot's area. They came after them, and they captured Lot and his family, took them up north. Abram hears about this. This is all Genesis chapters 13 and 14, by the way. Abram pursues them to Dan, which is 120 miles away. And you see the blue circle. That's Dan, thereabouts at least. And this is where Abram started from. So about 120 miles, he's moving between those two spots with his 318 men. They were very likely joined by allies. The verses talk about the allies that he has, and others probably as he attacked them, people who were captured joined in on Abram's side and so on. But they recaptured Lot and his family. And it was a very powerful army that they fought against, and but they did win. And they captured them. They took them back to where they were. On the way back, as they're swinging by what is now Jerusalem, Melchizedek came out, brought bread and wine, and blesses them. And that's the reference to Melchizedek. And it's interesting to see that happen then. So after these things, all this stuff has happened. Egypt, the famine, the war, capturing Lot, or rescuing Lot, I should say, and bringing him back. After all these things, the word of Yahweh came to Abram in a vision and says, do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. And that must have been a wonderful thing for him to hear. God, Yahweh, is my shield. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. And Abram said, well, Lord Yahweh, what will you give me since I go childless? And I just love this about Abram. He is not hesitant to ask Yahweh about things that are bothering him, things that he knows are an appropriate thing for him to ask, but he's not afraid to ask it and have dialogue. And we need to be like that. We can go to the Lord and God and ask things, talk to them, and they will help us. But he's asking about childless, because how am I going to have this great nation and be blessed and have progeny and all that if I don't have a son? That doesn't make sense. I'm childless. And he who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus. Abram said, behold, you have given no seed to me, and behold, a member of my household is my heir. He doesn't even belong in my family. He's just someone that helps us do stuff. Well, verse 4, behold, the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, this man will not be your heir, but he who will come out of your own body will be your heir. So God just promised him a son right there. And Yahweh brought him outside. He said, look now towards the heavens, count the stars if you're able to count them. There's so many you can't hardly even count them. He said to Abram, so your seed will be. So many, it's like they're countless. It's a huge number. He believed in Yahweh, and he, Yahweh, credited to him, Abram, as righteousness. What a great thing to remember. The believing in Yahweh is what credited him righteousness. Verse 7, it says, he said to him, I am Yahweh who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land to possess it. And he said, Lord Yahweh, how will I know that I will possess it? How can I tell that? And he said to me, said to him, bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, turtle dove, and young pigeon. Go get those animals. And so he did. So he brought him all these and cut them down the middle and laid each half opposite the other, but he didn't divide the birds. Well, what in the world is that? That's kind of a surprising thing to see happen. He brings the animals and he cuts them in half and he puts them down in the middle. So here's what's happening with this. By this time in this culture, the idea of covenants firmly entrenched, and there's a protocol for blood covenants. A blood covenant is one that you're dedicating your life to. You're putting your life on the line for the blood covenant. And basically, it's when one person gets together with a second, and they agree on something. It's usually hard. It's going to take effort. I have to stick to it, or else it's not going to work. So they make this agreement. We're going to do this. You're going to do that. I'm going to do this. And then they sacrifice animals, and they cut them in half, and they put one half on the right-hand side, one half on the left-hand side, and there's a pathway in between the two. So they lay the animals like that, half on this side, half on this side, and in the middle, the blood is running down from the sacrifice. And then person number one walks through the blood path, gets to the other side. And then the second person does same thing, walks through the blood path, gets to the other end. And then they can look back and symbolically what they're saying is they look back on those carcasses and they say, you know what? If I don't follow through on what I just agreed to, this is a blood covenant, and whatever happened to those animals should happen to me. I should be killed, and that should be the end of it. Spill my blood. I'm done. So that makes it a blood covenant, and that means they are guaranteeing with their life that they will indeed carry through. That's what Abraham is preparing in these verses. The birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, terror and great darkness fell on him. He was having a dream, and it was a nightmarish dream. It had elements of it that were terrifying to him and very disturbing to him. Because what's happening is God is revealing to him things that are going to happen in the next 400 years, basically. And he says, no, he said to Abraham, no, yes, no. So there's that figure of saying the same thing twice. No, that your offspring will live as sojourners in a land that's not theirs 400 years. And at the end of it, they're going to serve them and they will afflict them. This sojourning is they're wandering in places that they don't own for 400 years. And at the end of that 400 years, it concludes with them being slaves. And now that it's all happened, we know what he was talking about was Egypt, and they were slaves in Egypt. In verse 14, it says, but I will judge that nation whom they serve, Egypt, and in the end, they will come out with great wealth. And they did. When Moses led them out of Egypt, Egyptians gave them all kinds of wealth to leave with. Verse 15, but you will go to your fathers in peace. You will be buried at a good old age. And 16, in the fourth generation, they will come here again. So when there's 4 generations past while they're slaves in Egypt, when they're in Egypt, and not all the time were they slaves, but for 4 generations within Egypt, they're going to come out and they're going to come back. And that's exactly what happened when you read it. Started with Levi and then carried on through. So that's the dream, and it was very disturbing to Abram at this point. It came to pass in verse 17 that when the sun went down, it was dark. Behold, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces of the animals, the halves that are split with the blood running down the center. Sun goes down, and now a smoking firepot goes through, and then a flaming torch passes through. What's going on with that? What's happening here is God is taking the place of Abram to pass through on the blood path between the carcasses, And then he goes through again with the flaming torch as himself. So he's playing the part of the first person and the second person both. He's making a blood covenant with himself, which means it is locked in. It is absolutely going to happen. It is unconditional. And it's in a way, it's demonstrated in a way that Abram could really understand and really be exceptionally confident of what's going on and that it is true. In that day, Yahweh cut a covenant with Abram, saying, to your seed I have given this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. So now, chapter 16, again, we're not going to read it, but the synopsis is Sarai says, to make all this happen, he's got to have a son. She had received slaves while in Egypt during the famine, and so he gave an Egyptian slave girl to him to bear a child, which he did, and the child's name was Ishmael. A lot of drama follows, and you can read about it in chapter 16. And then Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. And now we're going to go to chapter 17, which happens 13 years later when he's 99. Chapter 17, verse 1. When Abram was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless. And that's the way we should walk too, walking blameless before God, doing what's right. I will make my covenant between me and you and will increase your numbers greatly, yes, greatly. Again, that figure. Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, as for me, verse 4, behold, my covenant is with you. You will be the father of a crowd of nations. Not just a crowd of people, but a crowd of nations which have a crowd of people in them. He's a crowd of nations. No longer will your name be called Abram, but your name will be Abraham. Abram, the name Abram means exalted father, and the word Abraham means father of a multitude. And he clearly will be that, being father of a crowd of nations. For I have made you the father of a crowd of nations. Verse 6, I will make you fruitful greatly, yes, greatly fruitful. And I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. It's just incredible, this promise to him. Verse 7, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant. I'm going to keep renewing this. It's going to keep on going forward to be a God to you and to your seed after you. I will give to you and to your seed after you the land where you're traveling, all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said to Abraham, as for you, you are to keep my covenant, you and your seed after you through their generations. And now he's going to introduce a new covenant. And this is a little different. And what it is, it's really the memorial of the covenant that he's been talking about. It says, this is my covenant between me and you and your seed after you that you must keep. Every male among you must be circumcised. You must circumcise the flesh of your foreskin. It will be a sign of the covenant between me and you. So it's a sign, it's the memorial of it. It memorializes what's happening. And remember, a memorial is something in the physical world that when you see it, you get reminded of the covenant, of the promise, and what your obligations are to that promise as well. And here, I guarantee you, every male after that remembered it frequently, being circumcised. Verse 12, he who is 8 days old among you must be circumcised. Every male throughout your generations, including a slave who's born in your house or bought with money from any foreigner who's not your seed. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money must be circumcised. My covenant will be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. The uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that soul will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. So to stay in there, you got to be circumcised. Then God said to Abram, as for Sarai, your wife, you're not to call her name Sarai, but her name will be Sarah. I will bless her. That means, actually, both of them mean princess or queen. And I think in this context, as we'll see here, queen really makes sense. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she will be a mother of nations. Kings of people will come from her. Peoples. So that sounds like a queen to me. Verse 17, then Abram fell on his face and he laughed and said in his heart, he's just laughing to himself, quietly to himself. And in his heart, he said, wait a minute. This is kind of funny. Will a child be born to him who's 100 years old? Will Sarah, who's 90 years old, give birth? That's kind of funny that you say that. I got to offer him, I got to remind him about Ishmael because he's already born. So Abram says to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. Kind of presents him back. And God says, truly, Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you are to call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant for his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I heard you. I heard you. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful, will multiply him exceedingly, yes, exceedingly. He will become the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at the same set time next year. And when he finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. So there you have it. Quite the deal. Now, what we're going to see next is an example of God intervening and taking action to support this promise in a very important way. And that happens in chapter 18. Verse 1, Yahweh appears to him, to Abraham, by the oaks of Mamre as he's sitting at the entrance of the tent in the heat of the day. So let's get the mind picture of what's going on here. It's hot. It's really hot there, especially in the sun. It just beats down on you, okay? And Abraham and his group, they live in tents. They've got to keep moving with the flocks and the herds and so on. So they are tent dwellers. And so here it is, the heat of the day, probably heat of the afternoon. He's got the big flap open on the entrance perhaps, and he's sitting under there on his lawn chair with a glass of lemonade or whatever. He's just trying to cool off, staying cool. He's just sitting there. And he lifts up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing nearby him. When he saw them, he ran from the entrance of the tent to meet them, and he bowed down to the ground. And we'll see, he recognized God was one of those. Yahweh was one of the 3. And he says, Lord, if now I found favor in your eyes, please do not pass your servant by, but let a little water be brought, then wash your feet, rest yourselves under the tree. I'll get you a piece of bread so you can refresh yourselves, then pass on by. For that's why you're passing by your servant. You know, I'm your servant. I wanted to bless you. You chose to come by here. Well, that's, great. Let me help you out. Let me give you some rest, help you out, rest and relax. He said, very well, do as you've said. So he turns around, runs into the tent to Sarah and says, hey, we need some bread, quick, 3 measures of fine flour, knead it and make loaves. You got to make it from scratch. If I remember right, 3 measures, it's either 2 or 3 gallons. It's a lot. It's a lot of flour. So she's making a lot of bread. Verse 7, Abraham ran to the herd and took a tender and good calf, gave it to the servant who hurried to prepare it. So he's got to butcher it. He's got to cook it, put seasons, whatever they have to do to prepare it in a nice way. And then when it's all done, Abraham takes the curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree while they ate. So they ate. Yahweh and the 2 angels that were with him ate. And they asked him, well, where's Sarah, your wife? And he said, well, she's there in the tent. He said, and Yahweh says, I will return to you about this time next year. And behold, Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Well, Sarah was listening from the tent entrance, which was behind him. So she's behind Yahweh. She's listening. She heard him say that. And now Abram and Sarah were old, well advanced in days. For Sarah, it had ceased to be after the way of the women. She's well beyond childbearing years. Her body isn't equipped anymore. Biologically, she can't do it anymore. And so Sarah laughs within herself again, quietly. She isn't out loud, but within herself, she laughs and says, really, after I'm worn out, and my Lord also is old, by the way, he's 100 years old almost, will I have this pleasure? And it would have been a pleasure because in this culture, if a woman who's married does not have any children, then the view of the culture and the people is there's something wrong with her. God does not bless her. She must have done something. There's something wrong in this relationship or with her. Something's wrong. And it was not good. And here she's had to live with that for 90 years. But she doesn't believe it. Well, Yahweh said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh, saying, will I really give birth to a child when I'm old? Why'd she say that? Is anything too hard for Yahweh? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son. And then Sarah denied it, saying, I didn't laugh. I didn't laugh, because she was afraid. Yeah, I get that. She got called out by Yahweh. But he said, no, you did too laugh. You laughed. You didn't believe it. You laughed. And I think about this record in the context of Mary, the mother of Jesus, when Gabriel came to her and gave her the message. And it was very similar. Sarah couldn't possibly have a baby. She's well beyond childbirth age and so on. But here's God telling her it's going to happen. And so in Mary's time, she can't have a baby either. She's a virgin. How could that happen? But there's Gabriel directly from God saying it's going to happen as long as you say yes. And that must have really helped her. I bet that blessed her to think about that. Well, that was the message. And Sarah laughed. I'm not going to laugh because it comes true. And then she asked a question and things went on and it worked out in both cases. Now, chapter 19, we're going to skip over. That's when Sodom and Gomorrah get destroyed. The two angels that were with Yahweh in the last chapter, chapter 18, those two angels were the ones going to Sodom and Gomorrah to destroy it. And so that's what happened next. And then after that, chapter 20, Abraham traveled from there toward the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur while temporarily staying in Gerar. I don't know if this was just his normal movements with the herds and stuff, or if maybe he was forced further east because of what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. That was such a huge event, and it was a powerful event. And I wonder if it damaged maybe the grazing land or water supply or something, and that it kind of pushed him out a little bit to the east. I'm not sure. I don't know that, but it just seemed like that kind of made sense. But here he is in Gerar, which is a particular area or city, and he comes in and he says about Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. He doesn't say she's my wife. He says she's my sister. That's how he introduces her. So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. It says in several places that Sarah was a beautiful woman. She was gorgeous and so highly desirable by men. But if she's married, she's taken. But if she's just his sister, then she's available. So he took her. But verse 3, God came to Abimelech in a dream of the night and said to him, behold, you are a dead man because of the woman you've taken, for she's a man's wife. You're a dead man. And he says, now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, Lord, will you kill a nation even though it's blameless? Did not he himself say to me, she's my sister? He told me himself that she was his sister, and she said, he's my brother. In the integrity of my heart and with clean hands, I've done this. I didn't know. And God said to him in the dream, indeed, I know that you in the integrity of your heart, you've done this, and I also kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. But now return the man's wife. Indeed, he's a prophet, and he'll pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you will die, yes, die, you and all who are yours. Whoa. So he gets up early in the morning, calls all the servants, tells them all that's happened, and they were scared. They were greatly frightened. They said, what are you waiting for? Get her back to him. Send her back. Get going. Verse 9, then Abimelech calls Abraham, said to him, what have you done to us? How have I sinned against you? What did I ever do to you to make you do that to me? You brought on me and my kingdom a great sin. You've done things to me that should never be done. And Abimelech went on asking Abraham, kept pestering, what did you see? What about me did you see? Why did you do that? Finally, Abraham answers him. He says, because I said to myself, we're coming into this area and I'm looking around and I say, surely there is no fear of God in this place. They will kill me on account of my wife so that they can get her. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. So they're stepchildren and they're stepbrother, stepsister. They're related by either the mother or the father. And when God had made me wander from my father's house way back when, I said to her, "This is the faithfulness that you can show to me. Everywhere that we go, say about me, he's my brother." That's what they did. They did this in Egypt too during the famine, a very similar thing. So then Abimelech took sheep and cattle, male slaves, female slaves, gave them to Abraham, and returned Sarah, his wife, to him. Abimelech said, "Behold, my land is before you. Wherever it seems good in your eyes, dwell there." And to Sarah he said, "Behold, I've given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, it is for you a covering of the eyes to everyone who's with you. In front of everyone, you are vindicated." There's no doubt, nothing happened. You are vindicated. And then Abram prayed to God in verse 17, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his female slaves so that they could bear children. For Yahweh had closed, yes, closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. This is a really big deal. It seems bigger than just the record, just reading it. There's got to be more behind this than just the record of it. And and there is. If we think about this for a moment, what just happened? God, with two angels, visited Abraham and Sarah and told them, "You're going to have a son in about a year, within the year." And then Sodom and Gomorrah gets destroyed. They move and they land in this area, and Abimelech takes her to be his wife. Well, what if Abimelech gets her pregnant? Then we've got a problem. The bloodline's gone. The son has to be Abraham's son with Sarah. It has to be that way. And if it goes any other way, it's over. So God has to solve this. Abraham, with this protocol of his, has gotten them in a jam, and God has got to fix it. And so he intervenes in it and makes things work out. It's all free will choices here, but he makes things happen, intervenes in a way that they all make the right choices, and it's set straight, and he goes forward, and there's absolutely no doubt. She's completely vindicated. There's no doubt in anyone's mind. Nothing ever happened between Abimelech and her. This son, Isaac, that will be born is Abraham's son. And so it is secured for going forward. And in chapter 21, verse 1, now Yahweh visited Sarah as he had said, and Yahweh did to Sarah what he had spoken. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abram called his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, "God has made me laugh with joy this time, and everyone who hears will laugh with me. They'll all just be, 'Are you kidding me? This is great,' and be laughing." And she said, "Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age." How wonderful. And the child grew and was weaned. Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. And the reason for that is, in this culture, the child may be an heir apparent, but he is not an heir until he's weaned from his mother. When the dependency of his mother in that way is over, which they basically do this when they're 5 years old in that neighborhood. When that happens, at that moment, that child is actually the heir. And until that time, he's only the heir apparent. So when that happens in the culture, 5 years old, typically, they throw a party because it's a big deal. I have an heir now. And that is certainly Adam's or Abraham's case here. And that's what that verse is talking about. So Isaac was born in 1854 BC and was made an heir in 1849. And quite the record of events for 25 years of Abraham's life. So let's summarize here as we finish up. God promised Abraham some stuff. Countless offspring, crowd of nations, a blessing to all nations, meaning the bloodline of the Messiah, the promised seed is coming through him, through his offspring. He promised land, the promised land, a son and an heir, circumcision, the memorial, with strict observance, the promised land, complete fulfillment is still in the future, and that's something to remember. It didn't happen in Abraham's time. It didn't happen completely, even when Joshua took Israel into the promised land and conquered it. They really didn't cover all of it. King David later conquered more of it and had a unified kingdom, but even then, they hadn't completely done it. It doesn't really get fulfilled completely until the Lord returns and does it. So that is still future and it is still in play. Abraham had one son from Sarah, which foreshadowed God's one son from Mary, which seemed to be impossible for both of them. Sarah being beyond childbearing age, way beyond it, and Mary being virgin. There's no way that could happen, but yet it did. So we know that Yahweh intervenes to ensure his promises are fulfilled. And now we also know that the devil is focusing on Abraham's family. I keep saying Abram because I had to train myself to say Abram early on. And now I'm not saying Abraham. But anyway, that's what's happened. That's what we've seen, and wonderful records that really are setting the foundation for a lot of what's coming. And there's the picture I just love. I think that's, in this case, God up there, and he's watching Abraham and Sarah make their way across the treacherous path to get to where they need to be, and they did. Thank you for attending this session, and I look forward to the next one with you.